The alarm shrieked through Silver Ridge mining town at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that would change everything. 237 miners poured out of Shaft 7 like ants fleeing a drowning hill. The sulfur dioxide cloud billowed behind them, thick and toxic, curling through the Montana mountain air, with the lazy menace of a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. Inside that cloud, invisible to the panicked crowd gathering in the gravel yard, a man moved against the tide. Dmitry Volkov didn't run from the poison. He ran toward it. For 6 months he had played the part of Dima, the mute miner, the one with the limp from a war injury that never quite healed, the one who took the overnight shifts nobody wanted because his hands shook too badly during the day, the one who ate alone in the corner of the canteen, head down, shoulders hunched, making himself small, in a body built to command armies. 6 months of lies, 6 months of watching, counting. 143 times she had walked past his shaft entrance. He had memorized the rhythm of her footsteps on the metal grating, the way she tucked her dark hair behind her left ear when she was nervous, the soft hum she made under her breath when she thought no one was listening, a melody without words that sounded like hope dying slowly. Alara, they called her Omega 23. She had a number tattooed on the inside of her left wrist in black ink that had faded to the color of old iron. She worked 16-hour shifts in the deepest, darkest parts of the mine where the sulfur pooled in invisible pockets and the temperature climbed to 110 degrees. She earned $8 a day. She never complained. And right now she was still inside Shaft 7. Dmitry hit the cloud at full speed. The sulfur burned his throat immediately, even with his alpha physiology protecting him, where human lungs would have already started to bleed. He pulled his shirt up over his nose and mouth more for show than protection and plunged into the yellow-gray darkness. The shaft descended at a 30-degree angle. Emergency lights flickered orange along the support beams, casting shadows that twisted and writhed like living things. His boots splashed through 6 inches of contaminated water that had backed up from the drainage pumps. The smell was overwhelming, rotten eggs and burnt metal, and something else underneath it all. Something that made his wolf Ares snarl inside his chest. Blood. He found the first miner 20 feet down. Old Marcus, 63, a decent man, who sent half his wages to a daughter in Helena he hadn't seen in 5 years, unconscious but breathing. Dmitry grabbed him by the collar and hauled him to the shaft entrance where younger hands pulled Marcus to safety. Back into the cloud. 3 more miners, 2 teenagers, brothers 16 and 17. They were crying, disoriented, clinging to each other. Dmitry shoved them toward the light, and then he smelled it. Rain on iron rails, wild sage burning in a summer storm, something untamed and clean cutting through the toxic yellow air like a silver blade through rotten flesh. Alara. His wolf, silent for 10 years, spoke one word. Mate. Dmitry's hands were shaking as he rounded the corner into the sorting chamber. Not from the poison, not from fear, from the certainty that if she died down here, if he lost her before he had the courage to claim her, he would follow her into whatever darkness waited beyond. She was lying face down in the water. 3 children, couldn't have been more than 12 years old, were clustered around her. Coughing, crying, pulling at her arms. She had dragged them away from the gas leak, gotten them this far, and then collapsed. The children were alive because of her. The children were alive and she wasn't breathing. Dmitry crossed the distance in 2 strides. He didn't feel the sulfur anymore. Didn't feel anything except the cold terror that wrapped around his spine like a fist. He scooped her up out of the filthy water, cradling her against his chest. Her head lolled back. Her lips were blue. The children grabbed at his legs. He jerked his head toward the exit and prayed they understood. They did. The children ran. Dmitry carried Alara up the shaft. Her body was so light in his arms it made him furious. $8 a day, 16-hour shifts. She was starving. They were all starving, and he had watched it happen for 6 months while he gathered evidence, built his case, played the long game like a good king should, like a coward. The sunlight hit him like a physical blow. The crowd had grown. 200 people, maybe more, ringed around the shaft entrance. Miners, families, the administrative staff in their clean clothes and polished boots. And standing at the front, arm crossed, face twisted in contempt, Cassian Drake, 28 years old. Beta, shift supervisor. She wore her authority like armor, all sharp edges and cold eyes. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tight it stretched the skin at her temples. She had a scar that ran from her left eyebrow to her cheekbone, a souvenir from a bar fight in Billings 3 years ago. She was beautiful the way a knife was beautiful, and she hated omegas the way some people hated rats. Dmitri laid Alara on the ground. Gravel bit into her back through the thin fabric of her work shirt. He tilted her head back, checked her airway. No obstruction, no breathing. He started CPR, 30 compressions. Hard and fast, the way they taught in the emergency training that Dima had never attended, but Dmitry Volkov, Alpha King, had learned from the best combat medics in the Western Territories. His hands sank into her sternum. He felt ribs flex under his palms. Too thin. God, she was too thin. 2 rescue breaths. He covered her mouth with his, felt her lips cold and still against his. Breathed for her, her chest rose and fell. Nothing, the crowd was murmuring. He could hear snatches of conversation fragments that pieced together into a picture he wanted to burn. Just Omega-23. Not worth the effort. Let her go, she's probably brain dead already. 30 compressions. His shoulders were burning. He had killed men with these hands, crushed skulls, torn out throats, commanded armies of 10,000 wolves, and he couldn't save one woman. 2 breaths. Cassian Drake's voice cut through the murmur like a whip crack. Get away from her, mute trash. Dmitri didn't look up, didn't stop. 30 compressions. He could feel the mate bond pulling at his chest, a golden thread that connected him to the woman dying under his hands. It was agony. Every second she didn't breathe was a knife twisting in his gut. I said get away. Cassian's boot caught him in the ribs. Not hard enough to break anything, not with his alpha physiology, but hard enough to make the point. Let the medics handle it. There were no medics. The company medic tent was on the other side of the mining complex, a 15-minute walk. Alara would be dead in 3. Dmitri kept working. Cassian grabbed his shoulder fingernails, digging in. Are you deaf and mute? I gave you an order. Move or I'll have you thrown in detention for insubordination. Something inside Dmitri snapped. He looked up at Cassian Drake, and he spoke. Touch her again and you die. The voice that came out of his mouth wasn't Dima's. It was the voice that had sentenced war criminals to death. The voice that had negotiated treaties with foreign pacts. The voice that carried the weight of absolute authority and the promise of absolute violence. It echoed across the gravel yard like thunder. 200 people went silent. Cassian Drake took a step back, her face draining of color, because she had heard that voice before. Everyone had. It was on the news, in the history books. The voice of Dmitry Volkov, the Alpha King, the Wolf of War, the man who had crushed the rogue uprising in the south and mounted the heads of their leaders on silver spikes outside the capital. It was not the voice of a mute miner. Dmitri's eyes flashed gold, not a flicker, not a glimmer. Solid burning gold, the color of molten metal, the color of an alpha prime asserting dominance. The alpha aura that rolled off him hit the crowd like a shockwave. 200 people dropped to their knees without thinking, without choosing their wolves, submitting to a power that was older and deeper and infinitely more dangerous than anything they had ever felt. Cassian Drake fell to her knees in the gravel. She was shaking. Dmitri turned back to Alara. 30 compressions. His hands were gentle now, careful even though his heart was a hammer in his chest and his wolf was howling. Mate, mate, mate. 2 breaths. Alara coughed. Water spilled from her mouth, sulfur yellow and foul. Her back arched. Her eyes flew open gray as winter storms, wide and confused and alive. Alive. Dmitri sat back on his heels. His hands were trembling. He watched her chest rise and fall once, twice, 3 times. Steady, strong. The mate bond sang in his chest, a golden warmth that spread through his entire body like sunrise. Alara looked up at him. Their eyes met, and for the first time in 10 years, Dmitry Volkov felt something other than emptiness. She tried to sit up. He caught her shoulders, eased her back down. She was shaking, her whole body racked with tremors from the cold and the poison and the shock. Her lips were still blue at the edges. She needed a hospital. Oxygen, warmth, safety. Dima. Her voice was barely a whisper, rough from the sulfur, but it was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. You can talk. He should have stayed in character. Should have grunted, pointed, pretended the moment of speech had been a hallucination brought on by mass hysteria. That was the smart play. That was what a good investigator would do. But Dmitri was done being smart. Yes, he said simply. Around them, the crowd was stirring. People were climbing to their feet, looking at each other with confusion and fear. Cassian Drake was still on her knees, staring at him like she was seeing a ghost. No, not a ghost, a king. Alara's eyes were searching his face. He could see the wheels turning in her mind, piecing together the clues. The voice, the authority, the way 200 people had dropped like puppets with cut strings. Who are you? She whispered. Dmitri wanted to tell her. Wanted to lay it all out, the truth, the lies, the 6 months of watching her suffer while he built his case against the people who had turned Silver Ridge into a labor camp. But there were too many ears listening, too many eyes watching, and there were people who would kill her if they knew she was his mate. So he said the only thing he could. Someone who owes you a debt. Before she could respond, before Cassian could recover enough to start asking dangerous questions, the wail of sirens cut through the air. Emergency vehicles finally. 15 minutes too late, but better than never. The medics rushed over with a stretcher. Dmitri stood up, still wearing his miner's coveralls, still covered in sulfur yellow residue and contaminated water. But the way he moved had changed. The limp was gone. The hunch in his shoulders had straightened. He stood at his full height, 6 feet 5 inches of coiled muscle and barely restrained violence. She needs oxygen, one of the medics said, a young beta with kind eyes. Sir, please, we need to get her to the tent. Dmitri looked down at Alara. She was watching him with those storm gray eyes, and he could see the questions there, the confusion, the first flickering edges of fear. Go with them, he said quietly. I'll find you. Why? Alara's hands shot out, grabbed his wrist. Her fingers were cold, her grip weak, but it sent electricity racing up his arm, the mate bond flaring bright and hot. Why did you save me? Because you're mine, he wanted to say. Because the moment I smelled your scent, my wolf woke up for the first time in 10 years. Because I've counted every time you walk past my shaft, memorized the sound of your laugh, the way you hum when you're sad. Because if you had died down there, I would have burned this entire town to ash and scattered the remains. But he couldn't say any of that. Not here, not now. So he looked at her, really looked at her, and let her see the truth in his eyes, even if he couldn't speak it out loud. Because you deserve to be saved. The medics lifted her onto the stretcher. She didn't let go of his wrist. Not until they started moving, rolling her toward the medical tent, and distance finally broke her grip. Dmitri stood in the gravel yard and watched her go. Around him, the crowd was recovering from the shock. Cassian Drake had climbed to her feet. She was staring at him with naked hatred, now the fear burned away by humiliation. You, she spat. Dima, or whatever your real name is, you're fired. Get off this property in the next 60 seconds, or I'll have security remove you by force. Dmitri looked at her, really looked at her. He could see the corruption written in the lines of her face, the cruelty in the set of her mouth. She was Gregor Ashford's right hand, the one who did the dirty work while he counted money in his office in Helena. She had beaten Alara 40 times with a silver-laced whip, locked her in an ore crusher for 8 hours, cut her arm 23 times with a silver knife just to watch her bleed. He knew all of it. He had documented all of it, and in 48 hours she would pay for all of it. But not yet. So Dmitri did something he had perfected over 6 months of undercover work. He smiled. It was Dima's smile. Weak, apologetic, the smile of a broken man who knew his place. Yes, ma'am, he said, dropping his eyes. I'll go. He turned and walked away, shoulders hunched, limp back in place. Every step was an act of will. His wolf was screaming at him to turn around, to rip her throat out, to make her pay for every second of pain she had inflicted on his mate. But Dmitri Volkov hadn't survived 35 years and 2 wars by giving in to impulse. He had survived by being patient, by being cold, by playing the long game. And in 48 hours, the game would be over. The medical tent smelled like disinfectant and lies. Alara lay on a cot that was too short for her 5'6" frame, her feet hanging off the edge, staring at the canvas ceiling and trying to piece together what had just happened. The oxygen mask covered half her face, plastic and cold against her skin. Each breath tasted like the sulfur she had inhaled, mixed with the clean medical air they were pumping into her lungs. She was alive. That was the first impossible thing. The second impossible thing was the memory of Dima's voice. Not Dima's voice anymore. Something deeper. Something that had made 200 people drop to their knees like marionettes with cut strings. For 6 months, she had worked alongside the mute miner with the limp and the sad eyes. He never spoke, never made eye contact, just did his work with quiet competence and disappeared at the end of every shift like a ghost. Except 3 times Alara had caught him watching her. Not the way Cassian's enforcers watched her with hunger and cruelty. Not the way the other miners watched her with pity and contempt for the Omega who couldn't even produce a proper scent. Dima watched her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, like she mattered. And then today he had spoken. Touch her again, and you die. The canvas flap of the tent opened. Alara's heart jumped into her throat. It was Dima, except he didn't move like Dima anymore. The limp was gone. The hunch in his shoulders had vanished. He stood in the entrance of the tent like he owned it, his presence filling the space until there was no room for anything else. The medic took one look at him and paled. "Sir, this is a restricted area." "I'm paying for her treatment," Dima said. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight. "All of it. Transfer her to Helena Regional. Private room. Best doctors you have. Send the bill to this account." He handed the medic a card, black metal with gold embossing. The medic stared at it like he had been handed a live grenade. "Sir, this is a—" "I know what it is," Dima said. "Use it." The medic practically ran out of the tent. Alara and Dima stared at each other. "Who are you?" she asked. Dima moved closer to her cot. He didn't sit, just stood there towering over her, and she should have felt threatened, should have felt afraid, but all she felt was safe, which was insane. "My name is Dmitri," he said quietly. "Dmitri Volkov." The name meant nothing to her. Should it have? "Why did you save me?" Alara asked. The oxygen mask muffled her words, so she pulled it down to her chin. "Why did you pay for the hospital?" "I'm nobody. I'm just—" "Don't," Dmitri said sharply. "Don't call yourself nobody." The intensity in his voice made her flinch. He saw it, and something in his expression cracked just for a second, showing something raw and desperate underneath. "I'm sorry," he said, quieter now. "I didn't mean to frighten you, but you're not nobody, Alara." He pulled something out of his pocket and held it out to her. A photograph, old creased. It showed a woman standing in front of a house. Alara recognized the small cottage on the outskirts of Silver Bridge where she had lived before her parents died. The woman in the photo was smiling, one hand resting on her very pregnant belly. Alara's breath caught. "That's my mother," she said. "How did you—" "Your mother was Lydia Thorne, née Lydia Silverton," Dmitri said. "Daughter of Marcus Silverton Alpha of the Silver Ridge Pack before it was absorbed into the mountain territories. Your father was Jonathan Thorne, a mechanic. They died in a car accident when you were 8 years old. You and your brother Finn were left with $12,000 in medical debt. The debt was bought by Gregor Ashford, who used it to indenture you into mine labor." Alara stared at him. "How do you know all of this?" "Because I've been investigating Gregor Ashford for 3 years," Dmitri said. 6 months ago, I came to Silver Ridge to gather evidence for a trafficking case. 47 Omegas have disappeared from this town in the past 2 years. All of them were sold to rogue packs in the south. All of them were processed through Ashford's mining operation first. The words landed like punches. Trafficking, sold, disappeared. "I don't understand," Alara said. Her head was spinning. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're on Cassian Drake's list," Dmitri interrupted. "You were supposed to be in the next shipment, 3 weeks from now. $30,000 to AlphaKing of the Rogue Territories. You would have been used as a breeder until you died." Alara's stomach turned. She thought she might vomit. Dmitri was there immediately, one hand on her back, steady and warm. "Breathe," he said quietly. "In through your nose, out through your mouth." She focused on his voice, on the warmth of his hand, on anything except the image of herself locked in a cage, used and broken and discarded. "Why me?" she whispered when she could speak again. Dimitri's hand stilled on her back. "Because you don't have a cent." Alara laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. "Right, defective Omega." "You're not defective," Dmitri said. His voice had gone hard again. "You're suppressed. Someone has been giving you wolfsbane, probably since you were a child. Wolfsbane, the purple flowers that grew wild in the mountains, the extract that could be added to food-water medicine, the poison that kept a wolf's animal side dormant." Memories clicked into place. Her mother every morning, giving her a spoonful of honey from a special jar. "This will keep you safe, baby." "How long?" she asked. "At least 14 years, Dmitri said. "Maybe longer." My mother, Alara thought. "My mother poisoned me." "Why?" she whispered. Dmitri was quiet for a moment. Then he said carefully, "Your mother's maiden name was Silverton. Do you know what that bloodline is?" Alara shook her head. "Silver wolves," Dmitri said. "One of the oldest alpha bloodlines in North America. They were hunted to near extinction 200 years ago because their power was considered a threat. If your mother was hiding your bloodline, it means she was protecting you from people who would kill you for what you are. Alpha bloodline. Not Omega? Alpha." Alara started laughing again. 22 years of being treated like garbage because she was a defective Omega. And all along she had been something else entirely. "I don't believe you," she said, but her voice shook. Dmitri reached out and took her hand. The moment his skin touched hers, electricity jolted up her arm, sharp and bright and undeniable. Alara gasped. Dimitri's eyes flashed gold for just a second. "You feel it, don't you?" he asked quietly. "The pull, the connection." She did. God help her, she did. It was like a golden thread tied around her heart, pulling her toward this man she barely knew. "What is it?" she whispered. "Mate bond," Dimitri said. "When an alpha finds their true mate, their wolf recognizes them. I've known since the first time I walked past you in the mines. 6 months ago, your scent cut through everything. My wolf has been silent for 10 years, Alara. 10 years. And the moment I caught your scent, he said one word. Mate." Alara was shaking. "This is crazy." "I know this is overwhelming," Dimitri said, "but I need you to listen. Cassian Drake knows something happened today. She's going to start asking questions. That makes you a target. You need to come with me, tonight." "I can't just leave. Finn is here." "Ronan is already extracting Finn," Dimitri said. "He'll be at the safe house before we arrive. I promise you your brother will be safe." "How do I know you're telling the truth?" Alara demanded. Dimitri flinched like she had struck him. "You don't," he said quietly. "You have to choose to trust me. But Alara, please. I have spent 6 months watching you suffer. Every day I waited, I told myself it was for the greater good. But the truth is I was a coward. I should have pulled you out the first day, the moment I realized what you were to me." His voice cracked. "I failed you. For 6 months I failed you. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that. But right now I am asking you to trust me enough to let me keep you alive. Please." Alara stared at him. At this man who claimed to be her mate, who had saved her life, who knew secrets about her family that she had never known. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to run. But there was something else too, a small voice that sounded like hope. "Maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe you're not alone anymore. If I come with you," she said slowly, "and Finn is there safe, then I'll listen. But if you're lying, I will find a way to make you regret it." Dimitri's expression softened. "I understand, and I would expect nothing less." The ambulance ride took 3 hours through winding mountain roads. Halfway through the drive, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Ronan. Finn is safe. He's asking for you." Below the text was a photo. Finn sitting on a couch in a room she didn't recognize, holding a sandwich that looked like it had actual meat on it. He was smiling. Tears blurred her vision. The ambulance pulled up to Helena Regional Hospital just after 10 p.m. They bypassed the emergency room, going straight to a private entrance. A woman was waiting for them, tall and elegant, with silver hair pulled back in a bun. "Dr. Yara," Dimitri said, "thank you for coming on such short notice." "Of course, Your Majesty," Dr. Yara said. "Your Majesty." Alara's brain short-circuited. "What did she just call you?" Dimitri sighed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wallet. From it, he extracted a card. Laminated plastic with a photo and official government seals. He handed it to her. Alara looked at the card, at the photo of Dimitri in formal military dress, at the name printed in bold letters. Dmitry Volkov, AlphaKing Mountain Territories, AlphaKing. Not a miner, not an investigator, a king. "Oh my God," Alara whispered. "I'm sorry," Dmitri said quietly. "I should have told you sooner, but I couldn't risk the investigation. Too many lives were at stake." Alara's hands were shaking so hard the ID card fell to the ground. "You're the AlphaKing, and you've been pretending to be a mute miner for 6 months." "Yes," Dmitri said simply. "Why?" "Because I needed to see it with my own eyes," Dmitri said. His voice was hard now. "Because my counsel kept telling me the Omega mortality rate was just a statistical anomaly, and I needed proof that they were lying. Because 47 people disappeared, Alara. 47. And nobody cared because they were Omegas." He stepped closer. "So yes, I went undercover. I worked the mines. I ate the same food, breathed the same poison. And I documented everything. Every beating, every illegal sale, every safety violation. I have enough evidence to dismantle Gregor Ashford's entire operation and put him in prison for the rest of his life. You needed to let people die while you played detective," Alara said flatly. Dmitri went very still. "Yes," he said after a moment. "That's exactly what I did. And I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But if I had acted sooner, Ashford would have gone to ground. The trafficking would have continued somewhere else." "Very noble," Alara said. "Did it bother you at all, watching us suffer?" "It destroyed me," Dmitri said quietly. His eyes were blazing gold now. "Every day. Especially you." "Me? Why especially me?" Because you're my mate. The words burst out of him like a dam breaking. Do you know what it's like to watch your mate being beaten and not be able to stop it? To see her starving and not be able to feed her? I haven't slept more than 2 hours a night in 6 months. My wolf has been tearing me apart from the inside. The only thing that kept me going was knowing that when this was over, I could save you. He stopped, turned away. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. I could give you the life you deserve, if you'll let me. Alara stared at his back, at the rigid set of his shoulders. He's telling the truth, she realized. The mate bond is real, and that terrified her more than anything. I don't know you, she said quietly. You say we're mates, but I don't know you. Dmitri turned around. The gold had faded from his eyes, leaving them dark and sad. I know. All I'm asking is that you let Dr. Yara examine you, let us get you healthy, and then you can decide. If you want to leave, I'll arrange transportation anywhere. If you want to stay and testify against Ashford, I'll protect you. If you never want to see me again, I'll respect that. But please, Alara, let me help you. Just for tonight. Will Finn be at the safe house? Alara asked. Yes, Dmitri said. By the time Dr. Yara finishes your examination, Ronan will have him there. You have my word. Fine, Alara said, but I want to call Finn, now. Dmitri pulled out a phone, unlocked it, and handed it to her. He's on speed dial too. Alara pressed the button. The phone rang twice, and then a familiar voice answered. Ellie. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Finn, are you okay? I'm great. Her 12-year-old brother sounded more energetic than she had heard him in months. Ellie, this place is amazing. There's a whole kitchen, and the man Ronan, he made me a real dinner. And there's a room for me with a bed that's not broken. And he said, you're coming soon. I'm coming, Alara promised. I just have to see a doctor first, okay? Okay, but Ellie, is it true? Is the man who saved you really the Alpha King? Alara looked at Dmitri. He was watching her with those dark, intense eyes. Yeah, she said quietly. It's true. Cool, Finn breathed. That's so cool. Despite everything, Alara found herself smiling. Yeah, kiddo. Cool. I'll see you soon. Okay. Okay, love you, Ellie. Love you too. She hung up and handed the phone back to Dmitri. Their fingers brushed, and there it was again, that electric spark. Thank you, she said quietly. Dr. Yara cleared her throat. If you're ready, Miss Thorne, we should begin. The safe house was a 2-story cabin nestled in the pines 30 miles outside Helena. It had a wraparound porch, warm lights glowing in the windows, and smoke curling from a stone chimney. The SUV came to a stop. Ronan turned off the engine. He was a compact man, maybe 5'10", with auburn hair and scars that suggested a history of violence. But his eyes were kind when he looked at her. Finn's inside, he said. The front door burst open, and Finn came flying down the porch steps. Ellie! He crashed into her hard enough to make her stagger. Alara wrapped her arms around her brother and held on tight. He smelled like soap and shampoo, clean in a way he never got to be at the group home. I missed you, Finn said. Are you okay? I'm okay, Alara said. She pulled back to look at him. His face had more color than she had seen in months. He was wearing new clothes that actually fit. You look good, she said, her voice catching. I had a shower, Finn said, grinning. A hot shower, for like 20 minutes. And Ronan made spaghetti. Real spaghetti, Ellie. Alara laughed. It came out shaky, halfway to a sob. Come on, Finn said. You gotta see inside. The inside of the cabin was warm and inviting. Hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, a kitchen that looked like it had been pulled from a magazine. A woman was standing in the kitchen, pulling something that smelled incredible out of the oven. You must be Alara, she said. I'm Mira. I hope you're hungry. I made chicken pot pie. Alara's stomach growled so loudly that Finn started giggling. Sit, Mira said. Food will be ready in 5 minutes. The door opened and Dmitri came in with Ronan. Dmitri's eyes found Alara immediately. How are you feeling? He asked. Confused, Alara said honestly. Overwhelmed, angry, scared. Take your pick. Dmitri nodded. We should talk after you eat. There are things you need to know before tomorrow. Tomorrow, Alara asked. The trial, Ronan said. We're moving up the timeline. Council convenes at 10 a.m. We need your testimony. My testimony about what? About what they did to you, Dmitri said quietly. The beatings, the conditions, the trafficking threats. Alara's hands started shaking. And if I don't want to testify, then you don't have to, Dmitri said immediately. But your testimony could save lives. There are other Omegas still in Ashford's system. Your statement could be the difference between them being freed or sold. Other Omegas, other people like her suffering. I'll do it, she said. Dimitri's expression shifted. For just a second, she saw something fierce and proud flash across his face. They will pay. I promise you that. They ate. The pot pie was perfect. Across the table, Dimitri watched her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. Every time she took a bite, something in his expression eased. When the plates were empty, Mira brought out coffee. Finn, Mira said gently, why don't you help me with the dishes, and then I think it's bedtime for you. Finn protested, but one look at Alara's face and he nodded. Okay, but Ellie, you'll be here when I wake up, right? I'll be here, Alara promised. When he was out of earshot, she turned to Dimitri. Talk, she said. Tell me everything. Ronan stood. I'll give you privacy. He disappeared upstairs, leaving Alara alone with the Alpha King. Dimitri sat down across from her. Where do you want me to start? The beginning. Dimitri took a breath. 3 years ago, a young Omega woman named Sarah disappeared from a mining town. Her family said she had been sold to pay off debts. I sent investigators. They found nothing. But the more we dug, the more we found a pattern. Omegas disappearing, always from mining towns, always with debts, always sold. We traced it back to 3 operations. Gregor Ashford's was the biggest. In 2 years, 47 Omegas vanished from Silver Ridge, worked to exhaustion, broken down, and then sold. To rogue packs, to alphas who wanted breeders. We found ledgers, $30,000 per Omega. Ashford has made over $1.4 million selling people. The number made her sick. And your counsel knew. Some knew, Dimitri said, voice hard. Some were profiting. That's why I had to go undercover. I couldn't trust anyone. If word got out, Ashford would have disappeared. So you became Dima. So I became Dima, Dimitri agreed. A mute miner with PTSD, someone broken enough that nobody would look twice. He looked up, met her eyes. I didn't expect to find you. The mate bond. The mate bond, Dimitri confirmed. 10 years ago, I had a Luna, Katerina, political marriage. She died in the Rogue War. Suicide attack. After she died, my wolf went silent. He screamed and screamed, but there was no sound, just rage and grief. His hands were shaking now. For 10 years, I thought I would never have a mate, thought I was broken. And then I walked past your shaft and I smelled your scent. And my wolf spoke for the first time in a decade. You said you've counted. I counted everyone, Dimitri confirmed. The way you tuck your hair behind your ear. The way you hum when you're sad. The way you smile at children even when you're in pain. I learned you, Alara, and every day I didn't claim you, it killed me a little more. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid, Dimitri said simply. If I pulled you out, Cassian would have known. They would have destroyed evidence. The trafficking would have continued elsewhere. I told myself saving you wasn't worth letting others remain in danger. He set down his mug. But that was a lie. The truth is I was afraid of what the mate bond meant. Afraid of being vulnerable. Of caring enough that losing you would break me. So I hid behind the investigation. The raw honesty made Alara's chest ache. You're not a coward. You saved my life today. After letting you almost die for 6 months, Dimitri said bitterly. Alara was quiet. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. Tell me about the trial tomorrow. The council consists of 12 regional alphas. They'll hear the evidence, financial records, testimony, medical reports. Ronan has an airtight case. And my testimony, you would speak directly to the council. Tell them what Cassian did, what Ashford's system does to Omegas. But Alara Cassian will be there. Ashford will be there. You'll have to look them in the eye and recount every moment of abuse. It will be brutal. I know, Alara said. I'm still doing it. You're sure? I'm sure. If I don't testify what happens to the others, we prosecute based on other evidence. It would take longer. Some Omegas might be moved or sold before we can extract them. Then I testify, Alara said firmly. I'm not letting anyone else go through what I went through. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met, Dimitri said. I'm terrified, Alara admitted, but I'm also angry, and anger is stronger than fear. They sat in silence, listening to the fire crackle. The Silver Wolf bloodline, Alara said. You said my mother was hiding me. Who? Why? Dimitri's expression went grim. 200 years ago, there were 3 alpha bloodlines. Gold Wolf, my lineage, White Wolf in the east, and Silver Wolf in the mountains. Silver wolves were the strongest healers. Their blood could cure almost any poison. And they could command other wolves, any wolf. It made them powerful and dangerous. The gold and white wolves saw them as a threat, so they hunted them for 50 years. By the time it had ended, the silver wolf bloodline was considered extinct. The last known silver wolf was your great-grandmother. But she survived, Alara whispered. She had one daughter, your grandmother, who had your mother, who had you. 3 generations hiding in plain sight, dosing themselves with wolfsbane to suppress their power. Your mother knew what you were. She knew if anyone discovered the truth, you would be hunted. So she hid you, poisoned you, kept you safe the only way she knew how. Alara's eyes burned. She died without telling me. You were 8 years old. Maybe she was waiting. Maybe she planned to tell you when you were ready. And now what does it mean? It means you're in more danger than I thought. If word gets out that a silver wolf exists, there will be people who want to control you. Use your healing blood. Use your ability to command. You're not just an Omega who escaped trafficking. You're a living legend. Great, Alara said flatly. So I went from worthless to being a target. You were never worthless, Dmitri said fiercely. Never. The mate bond was singing in her chest, pulling her toward him. Dmitri, she said quietly, what happens after the trial? What happens to me? That depends on what you want. What I want, Alara laughed. I've spent my entire life trying to survive. I've never had the luxury of wanting things. Then start now, Dmitri said. He stood up, came around the table and knelt beside her chair. Tell me what you want, Alara, and I'll give it to you. I want Finn to be safe, to go to school, to have friends, to not be afraid. Done. What else? I want to not be hungry, to sleep in a real bed, hot showers. Done. What else? I want to understand, she whispered. The mate bond. Why I feel like there's a rope pulling me toward you. Why I trust you when I shouldn't. Why I want you to touch me, and that terrifies me. Dmitri went very still. May I? Alara nodded. Slowly, Dmitri reached out and took her hand. The moment their skin connected, electricity jolted through her. Not painful, just intense, like coming home. This is the mate bond, Dmitri said. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. A connection between souls. When an alpha finds their true mate, their wolf recognizes them. The bond grows stronger with proximity, touch, trust. If we complete the mating ritual, we'll be connected for life. You'll feel what I feel. Our wolves will communicate. Our lifespans will sync. That sounds terrifying, Alara whispered. It is, Dmitri agreed. It's also the most beautiful thing in the world. But the mate bond is a pull and instinct. You have to choose. If you don't want this, if you want to reject the bond, I'll accept that. What I won't do is force you. How long do I have to decide? As long as you need. Days, weeks, years. I'll wait. And in the meantime, I protect you. I keep you safe. I give you space. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, we'll talk about what comes next. Alara stared at their joined hands. She should pull away, should protect herself. But she didn't. Instead, she squeezed his hand. Okay, I'll figure out what I want, and when I know, I'll tell you. Dmitri's smile was like sunrise. That's all I ask. He stood up reluctantly, releasing her hand. You should sleep. Tomorrow will be hard. Ronan set up a room for you upstairs, next to Finn's. I'll be downstairs if you need anything. You're not sleeping. I don't sleep much. When I do, nightmares wake me. It's better if I just stay up. Nightmares about the war. Nightmares about failing the people I'm supposed to protect. About being too late. Alara stood up. She crossed the space between them, moving on instinct. She reached up and touched his face, her palm against his scarred cheek. You saved me today, she said. You were exactly on time. Remember that. Then she turned and walked upstairs before she could do something stupid like kiss him. Her room was perfect. A 4-poster bed, a window overlooking the forest, a bathroom with a tub. Alara took a shower, letting the hot water wash away the sulfur and the fear. When she finally crawled into bed, the sheets were so soft they felt like clouds. She closed her eyes, and she could still feel Dmitri's hand in hers, warm and solid and safe. Tomorrow she would face her demons. But tonight, for the first time in 14 years, Alara Thorne felt like she might actually survive. And maybe, just maybe, she might even learn to live. Dawn came too soon. Alara woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee drifting up from downstairs. For a moment, she forgot where she was, forgot everything that had happened, and then it all came rushing back. The gas leak, Dmitri's voice, the Alpha King, the trial. She sat up, heart pounding. Today she would face Cassian Drake. Today she would tell 12 regional alphas what had been done to her. Today she would look her tormentor in the eye and make her pay. A soft knock on the door made her jump. "Ellie," Finn's voice. "You awake? Come in." Finn pushed open the door. He was already dressed, wearing jeans and a clean shirt that actually fit him. His hair was still damp from a shower. "Ronan says breakfast is ready," Finn said. He came and sat on the edge of her bed. "Ellie, are you scared about today?" Alara wanted to lie. Wanted to tell him she was fine, that everything would be okay. But Finn deserved the truth. "Yeah," she said. "I'm terrified. Ronan says you're really brave. He says not everyone would do what you're doing." "I'm not brave," Alara said. "I'm just angry." Finn was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm glad you're angry, because maybe if you're angry enough, they'll finally pay for what they did." Alara hugged him. "They will, I promise." Downstairs, the kitchen table was laden with food. Scrambled eggs, bacon toast, fresh fruit. More food than Alara had seen in months. Mira was bustling around pouring coffee while Ronan sat at the table reading something on a tablet. And Dimitri stood by the window looking out at the forest. He turned when she entered. "How did you sleep?" he asked. "Better than I have in years," Alara admitted. Something in his expression eased. "Good." They ate in relative silence. Finn chattered about a book he had found in the library, something about wolves and magic. Mira smiled and nodded, encouraging him. Ronan occasionally interjected with comments, and Dimitri watched Alara, his gaze never wavering for long. When breakfast was finished, Ronan cleared his throat. "We need to leave in 30 minutes. The council convenes at 10. It's an hour drive to the courthouse in Helena. Alara, I've prepared a briefing document with the names of the council members and a summary of the evidence we'll be presenting. You should review it before we arrive." He slid a folder across the table to her. Alara opened it. Inside were photographs, documents, spreadsheets, financial records showing payments from Ashford to various rogue packs, medical reports documenting injuries to Omega workers, testimony from minors who had witnessed abuse, and photographs of 47 missing Omegas, 47 faces, 47 lives. Alara's hands trembled as she looked at them. Some were young, barely out of their teens. Others were older mothers and sisters. All of them gone, sold, used up and discarded like trash. "These are the people we're fighting for," Ronan said quietly. "Not all of them are still alive, but the ones who are deserve justice. And the ones who aren't deserve to be remembered." Alara nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Dimitri moved to stand behind her chair. He didn't touch her, but she could feel his presence, solid and grounding. "You don't have to do this," he said softly. "We have enough evidence to convict without your testimony. If you want to walk away, I'll understand." Alara looked at the photographs again, at the faces of women who had been where she was, who had suffered what she had suffered, who hadn't been lucky enough to have an Alpha King go undercover to save them. "No," she said, "I'm doing this." The courthouse in Helena was an imposing building of gray stone and tall windows. Security was tight. Ronan had to show identification 3 times before they were allowed to park in the underground garage. As they walked through the corridors toward the council chamber, Alara became aware of the stairs. People in suits and expensive shoes stopped what they were doing to watch them pass. Whispers followed in their wake. "Is that really the Alpha King? Who's the girl? I heard she's testifying against Ashford." Dimitri ignored them all. He walked with the easy confidence of someone who owned every space he entered, Ronan at his side, Alara slightly behind. 2 Shadow Guard soldiers in black tactical gear flanked them, silent and watchful. They stopped outside a set of massive oak doors. "The council is already assembled," Ronan said. "Ashford and Drake are inside with their legal representation. The session is closed to the public, but there will be a transcript. Are you ready?" Alara took a deep breath. "Ready." Dimitri turned to her. For a moment, the mask of the Alpha King slipped, and she saw the man underneath. The one who had counted her footsteps for 6 months. The one who had carried her out of a gas-filled mine. The one whose wolf had been silent for 10 years until he caught her scent. "You are the strongest person I have ever met," he said quietly. "Remember that." Then the doors opened and they stepped inside. The council chamber was circular with 12 high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle. In each chair sat a regional alpha men and women of varying ages, all radiating power. At the center of the semicircle was a raised dais where Dimitri would stand. To the left was a witness stand. To the right, a table where Gregor Ashford and Cassian Drake sat with 3 lawyers. Alara's eyes locked on Cassian. The beta looked different in a tailored suit, her blonde hair down instead of pulled back. But the scar on her face was the same, and when their eyes met, Cassian's lips curved into a cold smile. Ilara's hands clenched into fists. One of the council members, a silver-haired woman with steel-gray eyes, stood. This emergency session of the Territorial Council is now in session. AlphaKing Dmitry Volkov presiding. We are here to review evidence in the matter of Gregor Ashford and Cassian Drake, charged with trafficking, conspiracy assault, and violations of Omega protection statutes. AlphaKing, you may begin. Dmitry stepped onto the dais. When he spoke, his voice filled the chamber. Thank you, Council Member Thane. For the past 6 months, I have been conducting an undercover investigation into Omega trafficking operations in the Mountain Territories. What I discovered was a systematic network of exploitation abuse and human trafficking operating under the guise of legitimate business. Gregor Ashford, owner of Silver Ridge Mining Company, has sold 47 Omegas in the past 2 years for a profit of $1.4 million. Cassian Drake, his shift supervisor, facilitated these sales through a pattern of abuse designed to break the spirits of Omega workers and make them compliant. He gestured to Ronan, who began distributing folders to the council members. In these folders, you will find financial records, medical reports, testimony from witnesses, and documentation of every transaction. But before we review the evidence, I want you to hear from someone who lived through this system. Someone who was on the list to be sold. Someone who survived. Dmitry looked at Ilara. Ilara Thorne, please take the stand. Ilara's legs felt like they might give out, but she forced herself to stand, to walk to the witness stand, to sit in the chair and face the 12 most powerful alphas in the territory. And Cassian Drake. Council Member Thane leaned forward. Miss Thorne, please state your full name and age for the record. Ilara Lydia Thorne, 22 years old. Miss Thorne, you worked at Silver Ridge Mining Company, is that correct? Yes, ma'am. For how long? 6 months. And during that time, were you subjected to abuse by Cassian Drake? Ilara's hands were shaking. She gripped the armrest of the chair to steady herself. Yes. Can you describe the nature of that abuse? Ilara took a breath. This was it. This was the moment. Cassian Drake beat me with a silver-laced whip 40 times over 6 months. She locked me in an aura crusher for 8 hours in temperatures exceeding 100 degrees. She set a bear trap that broke my ankle and left me bleeding for 6 hours before calling a medic. She cut my arm 23 times with a silver knife. Ilara pulled back her sleeve, exposing the scars on her forearm. 23 parallel lines, black and raised where the silver had burned. There was a collective intake of breath from the council. And why did she do this? Council Member Thane asked. Because I refused to be sold, Ilara said. Her voice was stronger now. Because I was on the trafficking list and I wouldn't go willingly. So she tried to break me, to make me compliant. One of the other council members, a middle-aged man with a beard, spoke up. Miss Thorne, that's a serious accusation. Do you have proof that you were on a trafficking list? Ronan stood. Council Member Brock, if you'll refer to page 17 of your evidence packet, you'll find the list in question. Ilara Thorne's name is third from the top. Scheduled for sale to AlphaKing of the Rogue Territories for $30,000. Delivery date 3 weeks from yesterday. The council members flipped through their folders. Ilara watched their faces as they found the page. Watched shock turn to anger. Council Member Brock looked at Gregor Ashford. Mr. Ashford, is this your signature at the bottom of this document? Ashford's lawyer stood. My client declines to answer on the grounds. Answer the question, Dmitry said. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Is that your signature? Ashford's face had gone pale. It might be. I sign hundreds of documents. I can't remember every... It's a ledger of human sales, Dmitry said. I think you would remember signing that. Silence. Council Member Thane turned back to Ilara. Miss Thorne, I have one more question. Why are you testifying today? You could have chosen to remain anonymous, to let the evidence speak for itself. Why put yourself through this? Ilara looked at the council, at their powerful faces, their expensive clothes, their positions of authority. These were people who could change things, who could make sure this never happened again. But they needed to understand, they needed to see. Because I'm not the only one, Ilara said. There are 47 women on that list. 47. Some of them are dead. Some of them are being held in cages right now, being used as breeders. And if I don't speak for them, who will? If I don't tell you what it's like to be beaten and starved and treated like an animal, how will you know? How will you care? Her voice broke. I'm testifying because someone has to. Because these women deserve to be seen, to be heard, to matter. Council member Thane's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Thank you, Miss Thorne. That will be all. Alara stood on shaking legs. As she stepped down from the witness stand, she had to walk past Cassian Drake. Cassian leaned back in her chair, that cold smile still on her face. Enjoy your moment, Omega 23, she whispered. You think the Alpha King will protect you? You're just a broken toy he found in the garbage. When he gets bored, you'll be back where you belong. Something inside Alara snapped. She stopped walking, turned to face Cassian fully. My name, she said clearly, is Alara Thorne, and I am not broken. Cassian's smile faltered. I survived you, Alara continued. I survived 6 months of your cruelty. I survived being beaten and starved and poisoned. And now I'm standing here testifying against you while you sit there in handcuffs waiting to hear your sentence. So tell me, Cassian, who's really broken? Cassian lunged. It happened so fast that even the guards didn't have time to react. Cassian vaulted over the table with silver handcuffs still on, reaching for Alara with murder in her eyes. But she didn't make it. Dimitri was there first. He caught Cassian by the throat mid-leap and slammed her down onto the marble floor with enough force to crack the stone. His eyes were solid gold, his alpha power filling the room like a physical presence. You do not touch her, he growled. Every wolf in the room, including the council members, felt the compulsion to submit, to bow, to kneel, all except one. Alara felt heat flood through her veins, felt something inside her that had been sleeping for 14 years suddenly wake up. Her vision sharpened, her senses exploded. And when Cassian tried to struggle against Dimitri's grip, tried to reach for Alara one more time, Alara's hand shot out. Stop! The word carried weight, power, command, and Cassian froze. Not because she wanted to, not because she chose to, but because she had no choice. Every wolf in the room turned to stare at Alara, because they had all felt it. The command, the power that reached into their wolves and held them still. The power of a silver wolf. Alara looked down at her hands. They were glowing. Faint silver light like moonlight made solid danced across her skin. And when she looked up, she saw her reflection in the polished wood of the council bench. Her eyes were violet, not gray. Violet. Impossible, council member, Brock whispered. Silver wolf, they're extinct. Dimitri released Cassian and moved to Alara's side. Not extinct, he said, just hidden. Alara Thorne is the great-great-granddaughter of Lydia Silverton I, the last silver wolf, except she wasn't the last. He looked at the council. Alara has been dosed with wolfsbane for 14 years. Her mother was protecting her from people who would kill her for her bloodline. But the suppression is breaking. And I, Dmitri Volkov, Alpha King of the Mountain Territories, formally claim her as my mate and place her under the protection of the crown. The room erupted. Council members were on their feet shouting questions. Ashford's lawyers were frantically whispering to their client. The guards had surrounded Cassian, who was still frozen on the floor, unable to move. Councilmember Thane banged her gavel. Order, order in this chamber. It took 5 minutes for the chaos to die down. When it finally did, Councilmember Thane looked at Dimitri with something that might have been awe. Alpha King, are you certain of this claim that Miss Thorne is Silver Wolf? I am, Dimitri said, and I will submit to whatever testing the council requires to verify it. But first I want a verdict on Ashford and Drake. Councilmember Thane nodded. Very well. Council, you have reviewed the evidence. You have heard testimony. It is time to vote. All in favor of finding Gregor Ashford and Cassian Drake guilty of all charges. 12 hands went up. Unanimous. And for sentencing, Councilmember Brock stood. I move that Gregor Ashford be sentenced to life imprisonment with hard labor in the very mines he forced others to work, and that Cassian Drake be exiled to the rogue territories with no pack protection and a brand marking her as a trafficker. Any rogue pack that shelters her will be considered an enemy of the crown. Seconded, said another council member. All in favor. 12 hands. Councilmember Thane looked at Ashford and Drake. You are hereby sentenced as prescribed. Guards remove them. Ashford was silent as they led him away. But Cassian, finally released from Alara's command, turned and hissed one last threat. This isn't over. There are others. You can't stop all of us. The trafficking will continue. You'll see. Dimitri stepped forward. You're right that there are others, and I will find every single one of them. I will dismantle your network piece by piece. And when I'm done, the only thing traffickers will remember about Silver Ridge is that it's where their kind goes to die. Cassian was dragged from the room, still screaming. When the doors closed behind her, silence fell. Alara looked down at her hands again. The silver glow was fading, but she could still feel the power humming under her skin. Could still feel her wolf awake and aware for the first time in her life. Dmitri turned to her. "How do you feel?" "Different," Alara said. "Like I've been asleep my whole life and I just woke up." "The wolfsbane is leaving your system," Dmitri said. "Dr. Yara said it would take 48 to 72 hours for full recovery. By tomorrow, you'll be able to shift." "I don't know how." "I'll teach you," Dmitri said. He held out his hand. "If you'll let me." Alara looked at his hand, at the scars on his knuckles, at the strength in his fingers. 6 months ago, she had been Omega 23, a number, a commodity, something to be used and discarded. Now she was Alara Thorne, Silver Wolf, the Alpha King's mate, and for the first time in her life, she had a choice. She took his hand. "Teach me," she said. 6 months later, the ribbon stretched across the entrance to the new building was silver, chosen specifically for its symbolism. Behind it, a crowd of over 300 people had gathered. Miners from Silver Ridge, Omegas from across the territory, families who had lost loved ones to the trafficking network, media crews with cameras. And at the front, standing beside Alara, was Finn. He had grown in 6 months, filled out. The hollow look was gone from his eyes, replaced by the bright curiosity of a healthy 12-year-old. He wore a suit that actually fit, and his hair was neatly combed. "Nervous?" he asked Alara. "A little," she admitted. Finn grinned in. "You're about to cut a ribbon. After everything you've been through, this should be easy." Alara laughed. He was right, of course. Compared to testifying before the council, compared to learning to shift into a massive silver wolf, compared to navigating the complexities of being the Alpha King's mate, cutting a ribbon was nothing. Dmitri appeared at her other side. He wasn't wearing his formal royal attire, just jeans and a sweater blending in with the crowd. That had been his choice. Today wasn't about the Alpha King, it was about the people. "Ready?" he asked. Alara nodded. She stepped forward to the microphone. The crowd quieted. 6 months ago, Alara began, I was Omega 23. I worked 16-hour shifts in a mine for $8 a day. I was beaten, starved, scheduled to be sold like livestock. I thought I would die in those mines. I thought no one cared. She paused, looking out at the faces in the crowd. She saw miners she recognized, Omegas who had been on the trafficking list and were rescued when Ashford's network was dismantled. She saw hope. But I was wrong. People did care. The Alpha King cared enough to spend 6 months undercover to gather evidence. Commander Ronan and the Shadow Guard cared enough to extract every Omega from every trafficking site across 3 territories. Dr. Yara cared enough to treat us for free. And all of you cared enough to show up today. Alara gestured to the building behind her. This is the Lydia Silverton Memorial Foundation, named after my mother who protected me the only way she knew how. This foundation will provide free medical care, education, job training, and housing for Omega abuse survivors. No one will ever again have to choose between safety and debt. No one will ever again be sold to pay for medical bills. And no one will ever again be treated as less than human because of their designation. The crowd erupted in applause. Alara picked up the oversized scissors. Finn held one side of the ribbon. Dmitri held the other. For every Omega who didn't make it, Alara said quietly. For every person who suffered in silence. For everyone who thought they were alone. This is for you. She cut the ribbon. The crowd surged forward, eager to tour the facility. Alara let herself be swept along, shaking hands, accepting hugs, answering questions. Mira was there, beaming with pride. Ronan gave her a rare smile and a nod of respect. Eventually, the crowd thinned. The sun began to set over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Alara found herself standing on the back porch of the foundation building, looking out at the forest. Dmitri found her there. You did good today, he said, coming to stand beside her. Whoa, we did good, Alara corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You could have, Dmitri said. You're the strongest person I know. You would have found a way. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset. I've been thinking, Alara said after a while, about the mate bond, about what you said 6 months ago. Dmitri went very still. What about it? You said I could take as long as I needed to decide, that you would wait. I meant it, Dmitri said. I will wait as long as you need. Alara turned to face him. I don't need to wait anymore. I've spent 6 months getting to know you. The real you, not the king, not the investigator. Just Dmitri. And I've spent 6 months learning who I am. Not Omega 23, not just Silver Wolf, but Alara. She took his hand. And I've decided. I choose you. I choose the mate bond. I choose us. Dimitri's eyes flashed gold. Are you sure this is forever, Alara? Once we complete the bond, there's no going back. I'm sure, Alara said. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Dimitri pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. Then I am the luckiest man alive. He kissed her. It wasn't their first kiss. They had shared tentative touches over the past 6 months, careful explorations as they learned each other. But this was different. This was a promise, a claiming, a choice freely made on both sides. When they finally pulled apart, Ilara could feel the mate bond settling into place, no longer just a golden thread, but a solid connection. She could feel Dimitri's emotions, his joy and relief, and overwhelming love. And she knew he could feel hers. How does it feel? Dimitri asked. Ilara smiled. Like coming home. Somewhere in the forest, two wolves howled, one gold, one silver, calling to each other across the distance. And in the space between heartbeats, Ilara Thorne, who had been broken and beaten and left for dead, who had survived and fought and refused to stay down, finally understood what it meant to be whole. Not because someone else completed her, but because she had learned to complete herself. And then when she was whole, she had chosen to share that wholeness with someone else. That was the real strength. That was the real victory. That was the real happily ever after.